Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends, as this video is brought to you by drroto.com.
I'll tell you what, I am getting really good at timing that intro. So, you do it a couple times in a day, and that's what ends up happening. I'm Chris Emrick. With me is Coach White for the DFS Tailgate talking NFL. Obviously, we were just on the air not too long ago, and things are going all right in the college football world for us. And, hopefully that progresses even better throughout the day, and then we get prepared for the NFL. We've got a really, really, really small slate. A lot of people on buys. Any initial thoughts about this slate, Coach White?
I guess just finding the chalk, man. I know we're both GPP players, so let's find some good pivots during our conversation today, because I hate playing a 30% on running back. So, and I'm sure you're the one that always knows the ownership. So you tell me where to fade, and we're gonna find our good pivots.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's talk about the first game that I've got pulled up here, and that's going to be Carolina at the New York Giants. I think Carolina is a 3-point favorite. After a couple disappointing games, Carolina was one of those teams that started off hot. We started to think maybe Sam Darnold's actually a lot better than we thought he was. And then the last 3 weeks, we're like, oh, no, this is I know this guy. DJ Moore has disappeared. Robbie Anderson hasn't had a big game. Christian McCaffrey's not back, and then everybody's injured on the other side of the ball. I think that there's some interest in playing a guy like Robbie Anderson on any given week until he blows up, because he's not going to be owned at all. And I think the last couple of weeks with the poor performances, DJ Moore is going to be kind of under-owned as to what his relative ceiling is. This is just not a high total game. We're not expecting it to be a shootout. I actually kind of like the Giants in this game as a home dog.
Yeah, I think this game's going to be slow overall. Darnold's been trying to hit Robbie Anderson the past 3 games, 11, 7, and 11 on targets. I feel like he's giving him his chance, man. He's like, all right, Robbie Anderson, you've dropped too many. I missed you on some targets. I think I'm just going to go back to feeding DJ Moore, because that's what was working to start the season. The one thing that Darnold did in the first couple weeks is he was tucking in touchdowns. I mean, he had 4 rushing touchdowns in those first 3 weeks. So that's why his production doesn't look nearly as good. This game just overall doesn't interest me outside of really DJ Moore. And I'm assuming Hubbard is chalk at running back. You tell me.
He's about 20%, which sounds like a high number, but and it is. He's up there. There's like 4 or 5 guys that are going to be right around that, like 15 to 20% range. So he's one of them. And I don't know. I feel like he's probably my second favorite around that price range, though. So, I don't have a problem going to him. I just don't know if he necessarily has that huge, like crazy ceiling that we're looking for from a guy.
Yeah, 6,100 is a little bit much. I mean, if he starts to get more receptions, maybe 3 to 4 targets in a game and actually catches all of them, that's really where he hits his value. But overall, I think the Giants' defense isn't terrible. They got decent cornerbacks. It's just they're a little bit slow at linebacker. So if they can attack them through the receptions with Chuba Hubbard, I think that's the way that Carolina is going to move the ball. But with the Giants, how are they going to move the ball? They don't really have any healthy wide receivers. Do you like Darius Slayton if he comes back at 4K?
I think Darius Slayton's always a guy that you can kind of you can play, especially because he has 2 touchdowns, and he doesn't need the volume to do it. He can do these deep, passes from Daniel Jones. Sterling Shepard's probably going to get 10 to 15 targets, and he's going to be a guy that's highly owned on the slate as well. At 5,600, he's a decent play. So I guess I don't mind taking spots from this game. I'll probably stack it like in an early only kind of situation, but there's not a lot of attractive spots on this overall slate. So even though this doesn't look good, the context of it probably looks a lot better as we progress.
If Shepard doesn't play, are you completely off the passing attack, or would you hammer Slayton at 4K?
No, I mean, you got Slayton, or maybe even a guy like Colin Johnson, who's seen quite a bit of work in the past as we've seen all of their wide receivers get hurt. A guy like Dante Pettis would be another guy that you could kind of plug in. And those are guys that are going to be, 3K. I mean, I love – if Shepard's not playing, I love Colin Johnson at 3K.
Okay. I like it.
I mean, if we just go back and take a look, I mean, the guy had 7 targets in a game, 5 targets in a game. Now, he didn't do a ton with those targets, but they're going to throw the ball. Daniel Jones in every single game this year. Let's take a look at his passing attempts. I mean, we have seen him throw it, quite a bit, 37, 32, 35, 40, and 51. The one game where it was 13 was he got injured. So, all right. So I guess we don't really have too many strong opinions on this. Still got to work through it. The next game is one that I think a lot of eyes are going to be on. 2 bad defenses, 2 good offenses, 2 teams that have Super Bowl aspirations. We've got Kansas City as a about 3 to 4 point favorite going into Tennessee, coming off of a pretty heartbreaking win for me, as I really, really needed Buffalo to cover -5.5, but they didn't.
I mean, I think Mahomes, I would assume that he's one of the higher owned quarterbacks, but sometimes quarterback, it doesn't matter with ownership. He's going to smash. This is a great spot for Mahomes. And last week, I mean, he played well. He ended up with, around 28, 30 points. Yeah, 27.98. And they had 2 turnovers on the opposite side of the field. So, they were moving towards the red zone, and there was a pick from Mahomes and then a fumble from a wide receiver, and that stopped 2 drives. And when people don't watch these games, they don't realize that. Mahomes easily could have had his 36-point game, and then everybody's on him this week against a terrible Tennessee defense. We just saw Allen gash him with Beasley in the slot. Diggs finally got his. So, I mean, I love Mahomes, and I would assume that people are on the flip side of, okay, yeah, it's finally time for Tannehill to get it going. I can't trust this passing offense yet, man. They haven't shown me anything this year. And it's always better to be early on these things than late. But I really don't see it right now. It seems like a different offense for Tennessee. And I don't really know what they're missing. But if they're trying to force feed Julio, but he's just in and out of the game, I don't know. There's just no mojo in that offense right now. What are you feeling outside of Mahomes in that Kansas City? Are we attacking Tyreek? I mean, I feel like that's a clear play. And then, Kelsey, we can't go wrong there.
Yeah, there's just a lot of questions that do surround this game. To your point, one of the frustrating things when you do bet the over on a particular game, as I did with Kansas City and Washington last week, watching that game, the 2 interceptions that you're talking about were both bad interceptions. So they should be able to kind of correct it. One went through Tyreek Hill's hands. The other one, I don't know what Mahomes was trying to do with that terrible thing. But those are so bad because especially what happens is, it's a big, long drive, took out a chunk of time, and then you turn the ball over in the red zone, which means the other team has to go a big, long drive. And if you're just not getting points out of it, it's not good for fantasy. It's not good for over bettors. It's great for under bettors. But I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that every single week you can play Mahomes, you can play Tyreek Hill, you can play Travis Kelce, especially against his banged up secondary. The concerns, on the Tennessee side of the ball are quite a bit. I mean, you have A.J. Brown, who has been tweeting that he has not been able to keep any food down, has the worst case of food poisoning that's ever happened. Julio Jones seemingly gets hurt every single game. Nothing new from that. We can expect that. But, that offensive line is decimated as well. I think it's a big game from Henry. For whatever reason, his ownership right now is a lot lower than I would have thought at 17%. I suppose the thought process is that people think that Kansas City is going to get out ahead and they're going to need to throw the ball. And, he can certainly get game scripted out. But I think Derrick Henry has kind of proven that in sub 11,000, the guy needs to be in a lineup every Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't get game scripted out, though. I mean, he's that type of player where Vrabel will he'll keep pounding the rock in the fourth quarter. We even saw week 1, they got destroyed by Arizona. He only had 9 rushes in the first half, and they were down by 20 points. He's like, all right, well, Henry, we'll just give you 9 rushes, and hopefully you can break off a 75-yarder for us in the second half. They don't game script him out of here. So if he's only at 17%, he's probably going to be my highest owned running back on the slate then. That's that's a little bit low for Henry, who easily could have another 3-touchdown game in this matchup.
Yeah, and quite frankly, there's nobody else on the slate or on any given week that has 3 touchdown upside, like realistic, that it's within the range of outcomes more than kind of a fringe. We've seen it several times already this year, and we'll probably see it again this year. So, the question usually becomes when Henry is that, 25, 30% highest owned guy on the slate, when you're getting the leverage from him to kind of avoid him. But I agree with you. I'm probably going to play a fair amount. Moving on from this game, we just run into a couple bad games here. This game I don't really have much interest in. I don't think that there's a lot to talk about. It's the New York Jets going to Foxborough to play New England. We have a 7-point spread here. I just don't think that there's a lot of weapons on this Jets team. Corey Davis is somebody that I like to play, just not in this matchup. Jamison Crowder is questionable. And then on the New England side of things, I mean, you could play Jacoby Myers. I think you almost have to until he scores a touchdown, right? Like it's going to happen at some point. But even, the running back situation, Damian Harris questionable, Ramon Stevenson getting a run. I just don't want any part of this game.
Yeah, no interest here. Belichick always, he just crushes rookie quarterbacks. He has his entire career. So I always fade those offenses. I would play New England's defense. That might be my favorite play in this game altogether. Maybe, I'm not touching any of these running backs because, like you said, Ramondre Stevenson is finally getting some run. So he's going to take away from Harris. The only thing that the Jets have that they didn't in game 1 when they played is Crowder. So maybe Crowder gets something going for him from underneath routes. But you're really banking on 1 to 2 touchdowns for Crowder for him to make a difference in this game. So I'm out, man. Like I said, New England defense, and that'd pretty much be it. And maybe I would touch Hunter Henry for New England, at that tight end position. There's just so many good tight ends this week, though. That's the challenge, But to be different, I think he would be a decent GPP play. He's got a touchdown, I think, in his last 3 games. Yeah, he does. So that's an interesting play. But let's just stick with the defenses and move on from that pretty gross game.
Yeah, I think the leverage spot too over Henry is I think you can play Jonnu Smith. I don't think that they're intrinsically different in their roles in this offense. It's just a matter of who gets the opportunity. Hunter Henry coming off of 3 straight games, like you said, with a touchdown. Jonnu Smith certainly could score a touchdown as well. He could certainly get the 6 to 7 targets, and at 2,800, probably the lower of the 2 owned. Not crazy about that play. Here's a game that I feel pretty strongly about. The Cincinnati Bengals, who I don't think are very good, despite the fact that they have a pretty decent record and some skill position players that I think are very good. I just don't think this team is good. They're playing Baltimore in Baltimore. Baltimore is a 6.5 to 7 point favorite. I love everything about the Ravens here. I think people just give the Bengals a little bit too much credit for what they've done so far this season. They haven't played really the best teams in the world. I guess their game against Green Bay when they kept it close is probably one of the more signature kind of games as it looks like. But, they came off this game where they just smashed the Lions. There's no look, who cares? But I love Lamar Jackson this week. I think he's going to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks, but I think he has a floor coming off of a game that was his true floor. He's going to bounce back here. I like Marquise Brown. I like Bateman. I like Andrews. I like everything. I think the Ravens smash here.
I 100% agree, and I would even play the Ravens defense, man. I have no faith in Burrows against this Baltimore secondary. Cincinnati gets a lot of fluky touchdowns. If people watch their games, man, it's nothing, and then a really long play, and you're like, oh crap, they're back in it. And until they start feeding Boyd and actually moving the chains on a consistent basis, this is not an offense I really want a part of unless they're playing a terrible secondary, which that's not Baltimore. So I would lock in. And I love playing a running back with my defense, but if I was playing Ravens defense, it's really hard to pick and choose a running back from this Ravens team. So I would attack that passing game from the Ravens. I would assume that Bateman is going to be very high owned at 3,400. Do you know what his ownership's looking like for that value?
Yeah, I don't believe it's as high as you might think. I think I looked into it earlier. Yeah, he's about 15%. So okay. It actually has come up.
Price. I think Brown, you can easily smash Brown. He's the type that could truly break a slate one of these days. You know, he could get that 3 touchdown, 190 yards. And you're like, holy crap, he did that on 6 receptions. He hasn't had that game yet, nor has he had it in his career. But there was a game earlier in the year where I think it was week 3 where he had like 3 drops, and 2 of them were for sure touchdowns. I mean, that could have been the game. So I like Marquise Brown and Bateman. You could do all 3 in a stack, and it's really not going to break the bank for you at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Marquise Brown with those drops always does keep his price low. Yeah. He's a guy that's hyper efficient with the targets that he gets when he catches them. But as a result of that, has a pretty terrible floor. And, you know, when he does drop those passes, you know, people just aren't on him. So moving on, another game that I actually do like the offense. I love Green Bay. They're 7.5 point favorites over the football team. The football team has had just a super disappointing year in terms of their defensive output. This team was one of the highest drafted in redraft defenses, you know, coming off of a pretty strong season last year where they did win the division. It was a bad division. And I think people forget that, especially with how close they played Tampa Bay in the playoffs, but they've just looked lost. You know, these trade rumors surrounding Terry McLaurin and Tua coming there. I mean, it can't feel good. I love Green Bay here. This is a lot of points, but I like Green Bay over their implied total. I like Green Bay to cover. I love Davante Adams. I think this is a smash game for him and Aaron Rodgers.
What about Aaron Jones? I think he's my favorite running back on the entire slate, actually.
Yeah, I think that he's a fantastic leverage play if you're not playing Davante Adams. I think that's always the decision that you have to make when you're picking this offense. Like, do you want the stack of Rodgers and Adams, or do you want to take the leverage and go with Aaron Jones? I don't think that we often see Aaron Jones catching multiple touchdown passes from Aaron Rodgers like we did against Detroit. So I don't know if that stack happens, but absolutely, Aaron Jones is always a guy that goes under-owned.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of the decision I'm really in between right now is do I play Tyreek Hill or Adams? And if I play Adams, I'm for sure playing Jones. But if I don't play Jones, I want to try to pay up for Henry. So there's some decisions to be made. But I mean, I'm really struggling not to play Aaron Jones this week, and I feel like it could be the Tyreek week. Of course, Adams is going off. I don't deny that. I really think he's got 10 receptions, 150 yards, and possibly 2 touchdowns in this game. But if he doesn't, let's just say it's 9 for 80 and 1. I'd rather have Tyreek and Aaron Jones. What would you do, man? Would you play Tyreek and Aaron Jones, or would you play Adams and Henry together if you could make it work?
I don't know yet. I mean, they're all coming in. They're all coming in pretty relatively low ownership. I mean, Davante Adams sub 15%, the 5th highest owned wide receiver behind Calvin Ridley, Cooper Kupp, Sterling Shepard, Chris Godwin, right around there with like Bateman and Myers. But then you got Tyreek Hill, like almost at 10%, just a little bit above it, and Aaron Jones sub 10%. So you know, it's a weird week where people are condensing to several plays, and some of these more expensive guys are getting overlooked, and as a result, you're going to have unique builds, not just putting them in your lineup, but the lineup construction that needs to go around them.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, if Tyreek's coming under 10%, I think that's where I'm going to pull my trigger then. But then I would almost have to play Mahomes with them, which I don't mind. It's just those 3 pieces, you know, 8,400, 8,600, and 75. I'm really going to have to find a value running back that I like. So do you have any value running backs you're hitting up this week, Chris?
Value running backs. I mean, there's quite a few of them. You know, in that 6K, are you looking for cheaper than that? Like not your Darrell Henderson?
Yeah, in between, like, let's say 45 to 58. Let's go there. 45 to 5,800.
We're going to touch on a couple. I mean, Devontae Booker at 5,500 is viable. We're going to touch on, you know, one of these guys that's criminally underpriced, and we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Okay, sounds good.
Next game, we have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Miami. Miami coming back from a London game. Atlanta coming off of a bye. Atlanta only giving up 2.5 points. This makes no sense to me. I definitely like the Falcons, but a value running back that, you know, comes out of this game, or there's several. You've got Myles Gaskin, you've got Mike Davis, and you've got Cordell Patterson, who is still running back eligible on DK. I like all parts of this, especially the Patterson and Davis play, as Calvin Ridley is just way too cheap at 6,600, and he is going to be one of the highest owned guys. I know he's questionable. Let's see, did he practice on Friday? Yeah, I think he's good to go. So, yeah, I mean, I think Atlanta smashes in this game. I think Miami is in disarray. Another team that's involved in those Tua trade rumors and Deshaun Watson. This team doesn't believe in Tua, and I don't believe in Tua either. So,
oh geez, this Atlanta team though. I mean, they're not good, and they haven't played good teams. I mean, like Matt Ryan, he really hasn't performed like Matt Ryan. He's got 2 touchdowns, 4-2, but this is against Tampa Bay, terrible. Secondary. Giants, not a great secondary. Washington, not a great secondary. Jets, not a great secondary. I just actually see Miami getting right here. I could be on the complete flip side, but I feel like Miami handles Atlanta at home, and it could be like 24-10 type deal, and Miami's defense scores a defensive touchdown. Why do you like Atlanta so much?
Coming off of a bye and Miami coming off of a London game, Miami not being a good team, Atlanta, this is just a smash spot for them. I don't think Atlanta's good, but this is 2 bad teams, and they have some significant advantage. Like I said, coming off of a bye week, being able to prepare this, and then coming back from London, I think it's a disservice that Miami didn't get a bye. I mean, like everybody's on the bye this week. How did Miami, coming off of a London game, not get a bye here?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that. They did play Jacksonville last week. Any idea if Xavier Howard or Byron Jones are playing in the secondary for Miami?
Xavier Howard was limited practice all week. He is questionable. Byron Jones, limited practice, questionable. He did participate all week, though.
Okay. So, I mean, they're getting 2 key pieces in that secondary. And I think that's why I'm so, excited about this Miami defense this week. Dude, you're gonna have to talk me into Atlanta. I mean, you made some good points with the London thing. I really didn't take that into consideration, and Calvin Ridley is severely underpriced in this matchup. But I feel like Xavier Howard could control him if he plays. I really.
Well, then you got Kyle Pitts, then you got Cordell Patterson. Right. They have the weapons to score and get around some of these, negative matchups.
What about Russell Gage if he's back? Any interest there off a bye week, and if he's healthy? 4K, I feel like that's a value that nobody would be talking about, and we were all excited about him, in drafts, late round. He just hasn't performed yet. I know Cordell Patterson's kind of taken his targets away, but he had 7 targets his last game against Tampa. Any love for Gage at 4K?
No, I think one of the things I drafted Gage quite a bit in redraft late rounds, and part of it was that I felt like Kyle Pitts would take some time to acclimate to the NFL, just like any rookie tight end or rookie wide receiver for that matter. I think that time has passed, and so we are going to see him utilized like we did last week a lot more. I do think that it takes away from Calvin Ridley to some extent, but I think it significantly takes away from guys like Ozzie and Russell Gage. So really no interest there. But if you wanted to game stack and you did think this was going to be a shootout, and look, these 2 teams are bad. They absolutely could go for like a 30-27 or, a high scoring game where the defenses don't stop anybody. We've seen Atlanta do that. We've seen kind of Miami do that at points too. You want to plug one of those guys in sometimes because it does go to, like a couple of weeks ago when Josh Allen, you want to stack him with Diggs, but it was Manny Sanders and Cole Beasley. So it was, you can get those weird stacks and they can go off on any given week.
So then if you did a game stack, all right, you like Atlanta, who are you bringing it back with? Are you going Gesicki, Waddle, or let's say Parker, because Parker didn't play last week, so that means he didn't travel to London, so he would be the freshest of them all. If we're playing that narrative, Devontae Parker at 5K is really interesting. What do you like there?
Yeah, I like Parker, and especially if he's playing, I think it downgrades Gesicki a little bit. One of the big things about Tua is that he doesn't progress through his reads. It's like it's who it's designed for, and that's who it's going to. And I think we saw a lot of designed kind of reads for Gesicki last week, and I don't know if that we see that as much if Parker's out there. Is he going to look to Parker first? And then if he doesn't have that, progressing through to Gesicki, he's just far less efficient passing to his second and third reads.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Another game that I feel pretty strongly about here. I've got the Raiders as 3-point favorites against the Eagles. I think this is a game that could be sneaky, one of the highest scoring ones. Love Derek Carr. The problem I always have with Derek Carr is, who do I put him with? Do I play him with Ruggs? Do I play him with Renfro? Do I play him with Edwards? Do I play him with Waller? The problem that I have is that all of those guys are viable. They spread it around all of the time. And if I build enough lineups where I cover those bases, now I've got like 10 lineups with Derek Carr in it, and that never feels good either.
Right.
And even on the other side of things, who do you stack? I mean, do you go maybe do you create a lineup where you've got like Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts, and then you run it back with like Ruggs and Waller? I mean, I just think that there are a lot of options in this game, and I do like it. I'm just curious to see what you think about it.
I actually love this game. It's one of my favorite games in the entire slate. And I like both quarterbacks, but I like the discount on Carr. I think this Philly secondary can absolutely be beat, but I think they're going to be beat by Waller. I think this could be one of those games where we get like a 13-target Waller game. We're like, oh, crap, why didn't we play him at 6,700? And, it seems like a high price, and it really is for a tight end, especially when you have Kelsey not that far away. You got some good wide receiver options, but if we're going to play Carr, I am 100% playing him with Waller this week. And if I did a double stack, it would be Ruggs for me. Again, I know he had that long touchdown to start the game last week. Actually helped me out on FanDuel with that. But he was only 3 yards away from that 3-point 100-yard bonus on DraftKings. And, that 22 looks a lot better than the 17 or 18.7 you're seeing. So I think a lot of people would be on Ruggs if he had that 3 extra yards and it said 22 instead of 19. But I truly think if we're game stacking here, Devonta Smith is the bring back spot. He can beat anybody. We just need Hurts. Hurts is just so hard to watch, man. Like, you play him and you're like, oh my God, he's at 8 points. And then before you know it, he's at 24. You're like, oh, okay, that's why I played him.
Yeah, he's not good. He gets there at the end of the game. The weird thing about him is that he does it every single week. You watch him, he's not good, but consistently, I mean, his fantasy points just this year are 21, 28, 25, 31, 23, 26. He gets there. He gets there somehow. And I mean, this is sometimes at 40 or 50% passing completions. Like, I don't know. The shoe's going to drop at some point. People do see these numbers. They're going to play them. I'd rather play Derek Carr. I'd rather stack this game on the other side of it, bring it back with Smith, maybe even like a Goddard. But I don't know. It's just tough because I don't think that this Eagles team is very good. They've also kind of outperformed what I expected from them.
Yeah, I agree. Do you ever do the double tight ends, like a Waller Goddard type deal? Are you ever interested in 2 tight ends in your
Not usually. The only game that I would be interested in doing that, at least on this slate, would be kind of like that Atlanta-Miami game and going like Gesicki and Pitts. Because both of those guys, they line up like slot receivers. They're not actually tight ends. Right. The problem that you end up doing that is any of those – problem with putting a tight end in your flex spot is you're usually paying a premium for that tight end because he's a good tight end, or else you wouldn't put him in your flex spot. Yeah. And they have very, very, very scary floors as tight ends. Darren Waller is the epitome of that. He goes off, has 13, 19, 20 targets, and then is like 5, 5, and 5. So it's tough to trust somebody in that spot right there, especially because some of them don't really necessarily have that kind of crazy ceiling. And Goddard's a guy that I don't think is a crazy ceiling. Waller obviously does.
Yeah, I really like this game too because it's in the afternoon, and with there being not that many great spots in the early games, like I don't want to watch Waller go off for 2 touchdowns and 100 yards and be like, shit, that's what just destroyed my lineup, is not having anybody from this Philly Las Vegas game. I'm not really worried about the Arizona Houston. We'll probably get to that, but I feel like we have to have at least one part of this game, and one of these players is going to absolutely go off, and you're going to need them in your lineup. Somebody's going to crush. We just need to figure out who that is, and it's either Waller or Devonta Smith for me, I think.
All right. Well, now moving into these last 3 games, Probably move through them pretty quickly. I don't really have much on the Rams versus Detroit. This is a revenge game for Jared Goff, for Matt Stafford. It's in LA. I think if it was in Detroit, I'd be a little bit more interested. I do love Stafford as a play. I think this is another Cooper Kupp week. I have his prop. I think it's like over 94. I also have Waller over like 5.5 receptions. But I think you can play anybody on LA. There's not much that I want to play on Detroit. I think you can go ahead and play Swift, but he's been figured out. People play him at much higher rates than I probably feel comfortable. He was kind of sneaky at the beginning of the season. He's not anymore. I think LA crushes, and I think these other two games are crushes as well. So do you have anything outside of, hey, Cooper Kupp is good, play him. Henderson is playing the Lions, play him?
No, man, it's that simple this week. It's kind of like don't overthink it. Darrell Henderson is a great spot. Cooper Kupp just keeps finding open areas. People are like, he's small, we're gonna lose him, and then they do, and he like gets the easiest touchdowns. It's so frustrating to watch, like especially when you're playing against him. But the dude's super talented. So if you're not playing Tyreek or Devontae Adams, he would definitely be number 3 on that list. But I do think Higbee is actually very interesting here. I think a lot of people will be playing Hawkinson, which I don't mind at all. But sure. I think it could be a Higbee week where we're like, oh, yeah, you know what? He had 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown, and at 4,500, 16 points would be good at that tight end spot.
Absolutely. So moving on to another crush spot, we've got the Tampa Bay Bucks playing or hosting the Chicago Bears. Khalil Herbert's super cheap, but we don't want to play any running backs against Tampa Bay. They are just extremely good at limiting running back potential. Means Justin Fields is going to need to do a lot with his arm, and I don't have a lot of faith in that. Tampa Bay does have Antonio Brown out, makes it a lot easier for us to kind of decipher who we're going to on that offense. It's Chris Godwin, it's Mike Evans. Chris Godwin's going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate because of this. So I kind of lean towards Mike Evans, but this game just doesn't feel like Chicago is going to be able to keep up with them. I'm going to have some exposure because Tom Brady's been magnificent this year, but that's it.
Oh yeah. It's really hard not to take at least one part of the Tampa offense right now because it feels like at least one player is going off for 25, and they continue to price them pretty low. Are people pivoting towards Howard or Brate this week based on Gronk and Antonio Brown being out? Because that's where Brady looks a lot when he has a wide receiver out, is that tight end position.
Let's see where my ownership has them. No, I mean they're barely owned, either of them.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So I think you could go to Brate. It's just, again, he's not a high volume guy, and I think that's the concern that people have.
Yeah, I mean, last week Howard had 7 targets, 6 receptions for 49. And that's kind of why I like Waller too. Is if Howard beat him up, I know Waller can. I would go Mike Evans though, but the issue is Mike Evans struggles against corners that are strong, and Chicago doesn't have great cornerbacks, but they're physical, and Mike Evans doesn't really like to get physical. So I think Godwin would be the one to play, even if he is the highest owned. I think people are right there. That's probably the play at 5,900. I don't love that game altogether. I'm assuming people like Mooney too. They're waiting for that Mooney breakout game at 4,600.
I mean, I like Mooney. I just don't like him this week, and I actually don't like him any week because he's got Justin Fields throwing him the ball, and that's the concern. So I think we're going to see another paltry performance on the road from Justin Fields. This is not his breakout game.
Yeah, I know. I'm out. And, I mean, Allen Robinson was a wasted draft pick in season long. You kind of saw it coming, but you're like, but what if? What if Fields actually, peppers him the ball when he actually gets in? And sure enough, it's just not happening. I'm a Bears fan. It's not fun this year, man. It's not fun any year, if I'm being honest. But we were hoping that Fields would be the answer. It's just we don't have the line to protect him at this point. Tampa is going to probably run him into the ground, control that game. So maybe Fournette becomes a play? Maybe?
Yeah, possibly. Again, I don't have – I mean, the Tampa team total is over 30 points. So they're going to score, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns. You do want some parts of it, whether it's Mike Evans, Godwin. I don't mind the O.J. Howard or Cameron Brate. But it's one of those teams that's really hard on any given week because Tom does spread it around, and there's no kind of clear reason why it happens. He's just going to throw it to the guy that's open. He's going to make the right play, and that might be the right play for our DFS lineup. It might not be.
Okay. Yep.
Last game, equally, maybe even more uninspiring. We've got the implied team total of 14.5 points. Houston Texans traveling to the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona's going to score a lot of touchdowns, but Arizona, just like Tampa Bay, has a ton of weapons, makes it really difficult to kind of, put together a stack with Kyler Murray, who's super expensive. DeAndre Hopkins has disappointed from a yardage and reception type of situation. And part of that is that you have got all the other viable options in AJ Green, Rondell Moore, Zach Ertz now comes in to step into, where Max Williams was crushing. I think you can play DeAndre Hopkins at 7,700 and almost no ownership. But I don't know if we ever see DeAndre Hopkins like we saw him last year, just because they don't need that from him anymore. But I still feel in my heart that it's there and it's going to happen. And I'm going to make sure that I play DeAndre Hopkins every single week until it does.
Yeah, I mean, last week he did be good. He had 2 touchdowns, got wide open on one. That's the stack I actually played, was the Murray Hopkins. And I mean, that it paid off. That wasn't a bad stack. And are people not talking that Hopkins used to play for the Texans? Is that not a narrative? Let's think about that. If he's going to be under-owned, I mean, Hopkins just be like, all right, let me go eat. He probably wishes it was Bill O'Brien still coaching. But, at the same point, D-Hop's going to crush any given week, and especially if it's against the Texans. I don't feel like Arizona's going to have to throw. So why pay that price? If we're paying up for Aaron Jones at 7,500, I'd rather play him than D-Hop, if I'm being honest.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's kind of all I've got. If you enjoyed the show, you got more questions, we do kind of leave it open here on Saturday because there is still, news and things to process. Join us in the members only Discord over at drroto.com. 10:30, we're going to be doing a start sit show with Dr. Roto himself, and then we'll have discussion with DFS. It'll be similar to what we did last week, and I think that's going to be the format moving forward. Means we will get done with lineups and the discussion around 11:30, so we can go and, make those last minute tweaks that need to happen. This isn't a super exciting slate for different reasons than last week. Last week was, Kareem Hunt week, and that made it disgusting. This week that there's nobody playing and there's all of these massive favorites. So I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm going yet, but hopefully it's in the green. Thanks for joining me, Coach White. Appreciate you stepping in, and good luck the rest of the day.
See you.